Let's jump into some BYU football. Jake Retzlaff going to enter the transfer portal and find a new home for his final season of college football. He reportedly faced a 7-game suspension for honor code violations. If he stayed, he wouldn't be eligible to play until after the Utah game on October 18th. Last Friday, his attorneys filed their response to the civil action against him, where a woman was seeking monetary damages from an alleged sexual assault in November of 2023. Through his attorney, Retzlaff denied all charges, and today, Monday, the case was dismissed. Jake is reportedly finding a landing spot just a month out of fall camp for about everybody. He graduated this spring, and so his ability to move around
really easy
is a lot easier. But Blaney went 11-2 last year as a starter, 10 wins against power conference programs, most in program history. And Cougar Nation still trying to figure out how they should feel about all this.
Yeah, and I mean, I know how you and I are close to Jake. He's a friend off the field as well for us. So we're just rooting for him to be able to navigate through all of this and find a great place. And we do know this, like immediately there were Power 4 programs interested in him. And he narrowed it down to just 2 or 3, like within a day. And so he's not going to have a problem finding a place to play. I hope it's a great fit for him, and I hope that he can move beyond all this stuff and just have a great experience wherever he is. He's a good kid.
The second thought is, well, what does that mean for BYU? They've got to decide on a new quarterback, McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, or Bear Bachmeier. So they've got that task. They can also put this distraction behind them ahead of the Big 12 meetings. And let's be honest, it was a giant distraction.
Yeah.
About as big of a distraction as you could possibly think of.
Yeah, and it's the only thing that could have been worse in terms of distraction if it would have been in the middle of a season, right?
Yeah.
So in the off season, it's a little less, but absolutely had an impact on what was going on over at the football office, and it was just kind of hanging over everything there for a while. And so, so now you got Trayson Bourget and McKay Hillstead and Bear Bachmeier. How timely was Bear Bachmeier's transfer in?
Pretty timely.
Yeah,
timely.
And he'll compete. The nice thing is you got Trayson and you've got McKay, who have both been in the program for more than a year now, and both had a couple of spring balls. They know the offense. They know what has to be done. And I'll go back to something I said last week when we were hypothesizing. Is that a word?
It is now.
Okay. Well, we were saying, hey, if we were actually saying, what if Jake isn't back, right? And we talked about who could play. We talked about all three, but I'm going to go back to what Kalani said to me. This is like a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about what he needed Jake to do if he did play, and he said, I need Jake to get better at managing the game. And I need him. He doesn't need to carry this team. The team is so loaded on defense, and there's so many weapons on offense that we need somebody at that position that manages the game really well, gets the ball out on time to the right spots. There's a ton of playmakers at wide receiver, running back, and tight end now this year with a really good offensive line to get the ball to the right people, distribute the football, and not turn it over. That's what we need to compete for a championship. Now, he was talking about Jake. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's like, well, we lose Jake. Well, I think these guys are capable of doing what Kalani was describing because they've been here long enough. They understand it. They've played in Division I games. Trayson, how many did he appear in? I'm trying to remember.
I think he had 8 and Hillstead had 6.
He played in 10. He played in 10 games. Trayson did. I'm giving you his numbers. 111 of 212, 1,314 yards, 6 touchdowns, and also had 219 yards rushing. His best game was against Ball State. He went 24 of 39 for 328 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 42-24 win. So he's played in games at Division I level. And McKay, he played in 8 games, but he started 4 games, right? And so 94 of 158, just right around 60%, 1,062 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. His best game was against James Madison, so not quite as impressive as Ball State. But JMU was, at the time when he played, it was one of the best FCS programs in the country. Now they've made the jump to FBS, but 25 of 47, 399 yards and 4 touchdowns, a freshman record at Utah State. They're 2,000. Both of these guys have thrown for over 1,000 yards in Division I football, and now they've been here for a year. They both have live arms. They're both athletic. McKay is really athletic. And then there's Bear Bachmeier, who's the most talented quarterback in the system. Even if Jake was here, he'd be the most talented quarterback in the system. But he's a true freshman, and he needs to learn the system. So you're not in bad shape, Dave. Not to do what Kalani was describing he needed his quarterback to do.
So tonight at 9 o'clock Mountain Time, I've got a story dropping on Deseret.com. We'll hear from Max Hall, John Beck, and Riley Nelson on how these three can get ready in 3 months for the Colorado Big 12 opener on September 27th. That's the conference opener. There's 3 months to get them ready for that. So that's at Deseret.com later tonight. Our first guest this evening has been following this Retzlaff story as the BYU beat writer for the Deseret News, and he's been one of the most thorough reporters on this, and certainly on Sunday. It's our pleasure to welcome back to the Wise Guys, Jay Drew, as we say hi to Neil from Jersey City. So we're all over the place, Jay. A lot of people are ready to hear what you have to say. So good evening. Thanks for being here. And let's just start with your reaction to the Retzlaff decision to move on.
Yeah, my initial reaction was not a surprise. We'd heard rumblings the last couple of weeks that a suspension was coming down. Frankly, I was a little surprised by the number of games, 7, which his sources told me is accurate. But not surprised that once Jake got the verdict, as it were, from BYU, that he would move on, especially when it was 7 games. That's more than half the season. That's after the Utah game in mid-October. So when all that was put together, my initial reaction was not a surprise. And, Jake's got to do what's best for him and his career. And obviously, if he thinks he's an NFL draft prospect, playing in only 5 games is not going to put a lot of film on tape. He's already got a good, solid season of film behind him, but that's probably not going to answer a lot of questions. And so I think Jake has to do what's the best for him in his own best interest. And obviously, he's by all accounts, is moving on.
Do you think, Jay, that if it came back and it was like, listen, you're going to have to sit for 2 games and do these things, that with the 2-game suspension, do you think you would have come back to BYU with that?
I do. I think anything above 3 games meant he was moving on. Talked to a couple of sources, some of whom I've alluded to in my articles, and they have all told me that Jake loves BYU. He loves Kalani Sitake. He especially loves Aaron Roderick and Aaron Roderick's offense, and he absolutely did not want to leave BYU. But the number of game suspension is what basically showed him the door, as it were.
On the live stream, Jordan Banks taking a break from surfing at the Outer Banks of North Carolina to get my Wise Guys
that
fix.
Is something, right?
There's Ryan, who's checking in from Memphis. We're with Jay Drew of the Deseret News. Under these circumstances, Jay, is this the best scenario for BYU to have Retzlaff leave and finish somewhere else and just start anew, even though it's June 30th?
Yeah, I think so. I think the distraction would have been too much. Even if it was a couple of game suspension, I still think it would have been a big distraction at next week's Big 12 Media Days. Best case scenario for BYU probably would have been that this happened a month ago. But it didn't, and due process had to kind of work its way out, and investigations had to take place, interviews had to be done, and so it is what it is. It's, like you said, June 30th, a month away from fall camp. But yeah, I think, and I heard Blaine mention this before I came on, is getting Bear Bachmeier, I think, is going to turn out to be absolutely huge for BYU. Even if he doesn't start the opening game, even if he doesn't start until week 6, maybe even if he doesn't start the entire season, I think that's a pretty huge development. And I don't know which BYU coach got him, convinced him, persuaded him to come to BYU, but that guy deserves a gold star.
Yeah, well, and we did hear that BYU kind of was number 2 with him, Jay, when he committed to Stanford, but Stanford promised him, we're going to build this offense around you, and you're going to start as a freshman and all this, and then the coach gets fired, and they're not going to run the same offense, and so all of a sudden it's like, well, my number 2 is BYU. I wonder how that would work out, and then BYU did a great job of showing him where he would fit in and how they would run this offense and how it would work for him. And then he was in, which is awesome. So it's that whole offensive staff. So back to the Jake thing a little bit. What message does this send to BYU student athletes in all sports as far as the honor code goes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, BYU is going to stand behind its honor code. It has proved that in the past, and it proved that again. And as far as, every human being is different. Everybody's different. There are all kinds of different athletes at BYU in different religious backgrounds and upbringings. And I would just say it's probably up to the individual athlete how they are going to perceive this. But I think BYU has been pretty clear on this, what they are going to do when things like this are made public. And let's admit it, there's been a public confession on this. And so there's not any sort of behind the scenes wondering and investigating or whatever. It's been out there pretty publicly.
BYU beat writer for the Deseret News, Jay Drews on the Wise Guys, presented by Brady Plus, Eddie, Mountain America Credit Union, and distributed by the Deseret News. I also work for the Deseret News, so there's no conflict of interest here. We're all in.
You guys are workmates.
It's the whole thing.
Good.
So, Jay, what does BYU do now? Do they go with Hillstead or Bourget or give Bachmeier a chance as a freshman coming in to win the job? That'll now be outside of the residue of Retzlaff. That'll be your number one summer assignment, is following that story. What do you think?
Yeah, as a good point. I was coming into this summer thinking, I don't have a quarterback derby to worry about it. You're not on pins and needles worrying that there's going to be an announcement any day during fall camp. But now there will be, obviously. My gut reaction is go with McKay Hillstead. That's just Jay Drew, my own opinion speaking. I thought of those two that Hillstead looked a little bit better running the offense in the media viewing portions of spring camp than Bourget did. Bourget was a little I don't want to say inaccurate, but he needs to work on his accuracy a little bit more, at least from my perception. And I also thought Hillstead's speed can really be used as a weapon. And he is really fast, you guys. I don't know if you've seen him. There was one play that he just outran corners, outran safeties to the end zone. I would say that. I would also say that don't discount Bachmeier, who from all I've heard, is a quick study, a fast learner. If he can pick up the offense, clearly he's the best, highest ceiling guy in the room right now, and the best athlete with the best frame. And so I would say, Hillstead to me would be the opening day choice, but keep Bachmeier in the wings if anything goes wrong. The Bear Bachmeier era begins at BYU.
Yeah, how big a hit does BYU take in the preseason polls with the loss of Retzlaff and an unknown at quarterback? It seems like they already took a little bit of a hit, well, actually a big hit, just with the news of the possibility that Retzlaff could have some issues. Now that it's official and he's moving on, is there more of a hit, or has that already been anticipated with the news from weeks ago?
I think it takes a little bit more of a hit, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people thought that this would be that he would stay at BYU and that 3 games or 2 games and he'd be back out there. So yes, I think I was talking to exchanging emails with a guy from one of the Las Vegas radio shows today, and he says he thinks that their win total will drop. I think right now it's at 7.5 on the books. That it'll drop to 6.5, maybe even 6 or 5.5. So yeah, I think it's already starting to take effect. There's
another quarterback that made headlines last week. It's been quite a week. 5-star prospect Ryder Lyons committing to the Cougars. Kalani is losing Retzlaff, but he is right in the middle of the biggest recruiting haul in program history. Got another commitment today from an Orem Tiger just up the road. And the whole gamut of emotions here at BYU football.
Yeah, it's been quite a week. Ryder Lyons committing. I saw something on the internet. You can't believe everything you see, that he might be trying to reclassify to join the Cougars.
I saw that too.
Cougars now. I got a chuckle out of that. That would have to move heaven and earth for that to happen. It's a great get for Kalani Sitake. I mean, in my little opinion piece that I wrote, I called it a seminal moment in BYU football history. I think it's we might be looking 10 years from now, pointing back to that moment of Ryder Lyons committing and saying that was one of the key turning points.
What's changed? Like, those of us kind of on a little bit of the outside looking in, we always compare BYU and say, how do they match up against Stanford, Oregon, and Utah? Because those seem like the schools that recruit LDS athletes and go head-to-head with BYU in a bunch. And right now, and they're not all in yet, but it's looking like almost a clean sweep, but at least a 90-something% sweep of athletes that those three schools have been recruiting. What changed? Because that wasn't happening before now.
Yeah, I think three reasons. Number one is the Big 12 membership, Power 4 conference membership. Number two is BYU's success last season, showing that they could play with the big boys. They went 11-2. And number three is Kalani Sitake's culture has spread, word of it, and has spread, and you literally have his own players doing recruiting for him, and recruits like Brock Harris, for instance, recruiting to that culture. And so I think those three kind of elements are kind of what stand out to me as what has changed in the last couple of years.
Conrad's on the stream from Granite Bay. Do you know where Granite Bay is? Feels like.
Is Granite Bay over in Northern California?
I don't know. Granite Bay.
Do you know, Jay, where Granite Bay is? I don't know.
I wanted to say Northern California, like
near Santa Cruz,
where Cody Hoffman was from.
It could be, yes. Yeah. Steve's from New Hampshire. We know where that is.
And we know where
Larry's
Orem is.
From Orem.
Yeah, we know where Orem is.
All right, Jay, last question for you, because you've got a date with your wife tonight, and we promised to have you off by 6:30. What are you going to write about next that's going to have us all going, wow? What are you working on?
Yeah, I've you guys probably know Chris Burgess's wife wrote a book about Behind the Bench, about memoirs of their times overseas. So I've got a piece coming out on her and why she wrote the book. And I got a piece coming out on Keelan Marion, or how BYU will move on without Keelan Marion. Kind of a little bit of behind the scenes of why he ended up leaving and what BYU did to try to keep him and wasn't successful, obviously.
All right. We'll look forward to reading that.
Good stuff.
By the way, Granite Bay is just outside Sacramento.
So we did. NorCal was right.
We were in the right state.
But I was a little too over toward the coast. So,
Jay, we appreciate your work. We'll read more in the Deseret News at Deseret.com. So thanks for your insights tonight, and we will be together again soon. Appreciate it.
We will. See you guys later.
Thanks, Jay.
That's Jay Drew. You can read him in the Deseret News at Deseret.com as well. And he's been thorough on this Retzlaff story. And I love our relationship because, as the beat writer, he goes after stuff. And as a columnist, then you get to just kind of explain, this or that, give your opinion or write fun stories. But that's where the work is done when you're on the beat.
Yeah.